can't do this to me, we built this from nothing, you owe me this chance to make it right. The hum of the conference room's air conditioning was the only sound. On the polished mahogany table, a single bead of condensation slid down Xavier's glass of water, a perfect, glistening tear for a man who never cried. His face, usually a mask of effortless charisma, was a blotchy ruin of panic. I met his desperate gaze. It's not a chance. It's a bill. ACTI, we met at a sustainable tech conference in Austin 5 years ago. Xavier was the keynote speaker, a magnetic force talking about biomimicry and industrial design. I was the quiet engineer in the third row, the one who had already built the prototypes he was only theorizing about. We talked for hours at the hotel bar afterward. He had the vision, the voice, the connections. I had the code, the schematics, the work ethic. He sketched the blueprint for our company, Veridian, on a cocktail napkin. I still have it. Our first good memory was landing our initial seed funding. We were in a tiny cafe called The Daily Grind, the smell of burnt coffee in the air, when the email from the angel investor came through. $50,000. Xavier grabbed my shoulders, pure, unadulterated joy on his face. He said, "We're going to change the world, you and me." The first red flag came a week later. An introductory email from that same investor, addressed only to Xavier. When I asked, he just laughed, running a hand through his perfect hair. "Sorry, man, totally in the zone, just forgot to CC you. It was a small thing, a plausible slip, I let it go. I was the builder, he was the salesman, it made a certain kind of sense." ACTII, the next 2 years were a golden blur. Our smart home energy regulators got a feature in Dwell. We signed a pilot program with a major property developer. I worked the late nights, refining the algorithms, stress testing the hardware until my eyes burned. Xavier worked the rooms, attending galas, taking meetings in New York and London. He was building the brand, he said. He started expensing $1,000 dinners with potential clients who never seemed to materialize. He took a 2-week market research trip to Bali that produced nothing but a tan and a series of smug Instagram posts. I rationalized it. Every partnership has an imbalance. I was the engine, he was the polished chassis. We needed both. I gave, he took. I told myself it was the cost of our shared dream. The dream cracked on a Tuesday in October. A certified letter arrived, a final notice from a plastic supplier in Taiwan. They were threatening legal action over an unpaid invoice for $28,400, an invoice I had watched Xavier mark as paid in our QuickBooks 3 months prior. I didn't confront him. The betrayal was so blatant, so simple, that it felt like the tip of a much larger, colder iceberg. At night I went home and didn't sleep. I made a phone call. The next day I engaged a forensic accountant, a quiet, meticulous woman named Ms. Tanaka. Her fee was $5,000. I paid it from my personal savings. For 5 weeks we worked in secret. After Xavier would leave the office, swaggering out for another networking dinner, I would let Ms. Tanaka in through the back. We sifted through years of digital receipts, cross-referenced bank statements, and examined server logs. Small leaks I had noticed were a flood. He'd been systematically over-invoicing and pocketing the difference. The real discovery came from a folder deep in his cloud drive, mislabeled marketing assets. It contained incorporation documents for a shell company called Zenith Solutions. Veridian had paid Zenith over $90,000 for consulting services. The registered address was his brother's apartment in Phoenix, but the true gut punch was a subfolder. In it were domain registrations and social media handles, all under my name, for a new company. He wasn't just stealing from Veridian. He was planning to steal its core intellectual property, my work, and launch it as his own solo venture. He was hijacking my professional identity, preparing to erase me entirely. ACTII. The breaking point came in the glass-walled boardroom of Sterling Ventures, 34 floors above Manhattan. We were there to close our Series A funding, a $5 million round that would make us legitimate. Ms. Sterling and her 2 vice presidents sat across from us. The air was thick with the scent of money and ambition. Xavier must have sensed my coldness, my new and unreadable silence. He decided to strike first. He cleared his throat, placing his hands flat on the table, and looked at Ms. Sterling. "Look," he began, his voice oozing false sincerity. "I know this is hard to hear, but my partner's vision has become a liability. He's meticulous, a genius, but he's holding us back. This company needs to move faster, and frankly, I'm the one who can take it there. It's just business." The investors exchanged uneasy glances. I felt the blood drain from my face, not from shock, but from a sudden, absolute calm. The plan, which had been a nebulous cloud of anger and legal options, crystallized into a sharp, clear weapon in my mind. As he spoke, Xavier adjusted his cuff, revealing a Patek Philippe watch. He told me it was a family heirloom, a tiny, overlooked detail. I knew for a fact, thanks to Ms. Tanaka, that it had been purchased 2 months ago for $19,000, laundered through Zenith Solutions. ACTIV, my attorney, Veronica, was a shark in a silk blouse. Her retainer was a painful $15,000, but her eyes held a predatory calm that I found deeply reassuring. We met in sterile coffee shops far from our office, planning our strategy. The process was tactile, methodical. We spent weeks notarizing affidavits, printing bank statements, and organizing digital evidence into chronological binders. One afternoon, Xavier walked into the very cafe where Veronica and I were meeting. I saw his reflection in the window and had to duck into the men's room, my heart pounding, until he left. It was a close call that solidified my resolve. Veronica's advice was simple: don't sue Ambush. A lawsuit would be a public, bloody war that could destroy the company's reputation. Instead, we would trigger the buyout clause in our partnership agreement. We would frame it as me wanting to exit. The evidence was an arsenal. We had 1. The wire transfers from Veridian to Zenith Solutions, totaling $93,150. 2. The Zenith Incorporation papers listing Xavier's brother. 3. The original unpaid invoice from the Taiwanese supplier. 4. Server logs showing a bulk download of our entire IP database to a personal hard drive, timestamped at 3:14 a.m. 2 weeks earlier. 5. An itemized American Express statement, paid by Veridian, showing the purchase of the Patek Philippe watch. 6. A sworn affidavit from a freelance designer who Xavier had hired using Veridian funds to create a logo for his new stolen company. 7. And the ironic coincidence: the GoDaddy receipts for the domains registered in my name were sent to his Veridian email address, which I, as administrator, had full access to. He was too arrogant to even cover his tracks. Veronica drafted a letter proposing a formal mediation to discuss the terms of my exit. Xavier walked right into the trap. He replied within an hour, agreeing, clearly believing he was about to get the entire company for a fraction of its worth. ACTV, the mediation room at Veronica's law firm, was aggressively neutral. Beige walls, beige carpet, a single generic print of a sailboat. Xavier sat opposite me, a smug, conciliatory smile on his face. "Xavier, thank you for agreeing to this mediation," I said, my voice even. "Of course," he replied, leaning back. "I'm prepared to be generous. We're partners, after all." Veronica let the silence hang for a moment before sliding a thick, leather-bound binder across the table. His smile faltered. "Let's start with Exhibit A," she said, her tone flat. "The Zenith Solutions invoices." She walked him through the fraud page by damning page, the transfers, the dates, the shell company registration. Xavier's face went from confusion to a pale, waxy panic. He started to bluster, to deny everything. Veronica held up a hand, stopping him. "And now for Exhibit B, the intellectual property." She produced a second binder, the server logs, the designer's affidavit, the receipts for the domains in my name. This was the killer proof. It wasn't just theft, it was a premeditated coup. The color drained from his face entirely. He looked like a man who had just watched his own ghost walk through the wall. He slumped in his chair, his bravado finally shattered. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "You can't do this to me. We built this from nothing. You owe me this chance to make it right." I leaned forward slightly, my hands calm on the table. "I built it. You just build it." ACTVI, the fallout was silent and swift. To avoid felony fraud and embezzlement charges, Xavier signed everything. A complete dissolution of his 50% stake in Veridian. A legally binding personal repayment plan for the $142,850 he had stolen. It was out of the company within 24 hours. There was no social media explosion, no angry calls, just a quiet surgical removal. Months later I saw him. It was a rainy Saturday. He was working at a big box electronics store, wearing a cheap blue polyester polo shirt with the store's logo on it. He was trying to sell a warranty on a flat-screen TV to a bored-looking couple. The Patek Philippe was gone, replaced by a simple plastic digital watch. He didn't see me. He was just another face in the crowd, his charisma extinguished. I rebranded the company. Veridian became Solis. I moved us into a new office, a bright, airy loft with floor-to-ceiling windows. I hired a small, brilliant team who shared the passion, not the greed. There's a quiet satisfaction in the work now, an earned peace that comes from surviving a storm you never saw coming. The company is worth 10 times what it was, but that's not the point. The point is the calm. I sometimes think about his final, desperate plea in that boardroom: "It's just business." He was right about one thing: it was just business. And my business was finally my own.